Book 9. Ismarus, the Lotus Eaters, and the Cyclops. Resourceful Odysseus then replied to Alcinous, "Lord Alcinous, most renowned of men, it is indeed a truly splendid thing to listen to a singer such as this, whose voice is like a god's. For I say there's nothing gives one more delight than when joy grips entire groups of men who sit in proper order in a hall, feasting and listening to a singer, with tables standing there beside them laden with bread and meat, as the steward draws wine out of the mixing bowl, moves round and fills the cups. To my mind this seems the finest thing there is. But your heart wants to ask about my grievous sorrows, so I can weep and groan more than before. What shall I tell you first? Where do I stop? For the heavenly gods have given me so much distress. Well, I will make a start by telling you my name. Once you know that, if I escape the painful day of death, then later I can welcome you as guests, though I live in a palace far away. I am Odysseus, son of Laertes, known to all for my deceptive skills. My fame extends all the way to heaven. I live in Ithaca, a land of sunshine. From far away one sees a mountain there thick with whispering trees, Mount Neriton, and many islands lying around it close together, Dulichium, Sami, forested Zacynthus. Ithaca itself, low in the sea and furthest from the mainland, lies to the west. Those other islands are a separate group, closer to the dawn and rising sun. It's a rugged island, but nurtures fine young men. And in my view, nothing one can see is ever sweeter than a glimpse of one's own native land. When Calypso, that lovely goddess, tried to keep me with her in her hollow caves, longing for me to be her husband, or when in the same way the cunning witch, Aeaean Circe, held me in her home, filled with keen desire I'd marry her, they never won the heart here in my chest. That's how true it is there's nothing sweeter than a man's own country and his parents, even if he's living in a wealthy home, but in a foreign land, away from those who gave him life. But come, I'll tell you of the miserable journey back, which Zeus arranged for me when I returned from Troy. I was carried by the wind from Troy to Ismarus, land of the Cicones. I destroyed the city there, killed the men, seized their wives, and captured lots of treasure, which we divided up. I took great pains to see that all men got an equal share. Then I gave orders we should leave on foot and with all speed. But the men were fools. They didn't listen. They drank too much wine, and on the shoreline slaughtered many sheep, as well as shambling cows with twisted horns. Meanwhile, the Cicones set off and gathered up their neighbours, tribesmen living further inland. There are more of them, and they are braver men, skilled at fighting enemies from chariots, and also, should the need arise, on foot. They reached us in the morning, thick as leaves or flowers growing in season. Then Zeus brought us disaster. He made that our fate, so we would suffer many casualties. They set their ranks and fought by our swift ships. We threw our bronze-tipped spears at one another. While the morning lasted and that sacred day gained strength, we held our ground and beat them back for all their greater numbers. But as the sun moved to the hour when oxen are unyoked, the Cicones broke through, overpowering Achaeans. Of my well-armed companions, 6 from every ship were killed. The rest of us made our escape, avoiding death and fate. We sailed away from there, hearts full of grief at losing loyal companions, though happy we had eluded death ourselves. But still, I would not let our curved ships leave the place until we'd made the ritual call 3 times for our poor comrades slaughtered on that plain, killed by the Cicones. Cloud-gatherer Zeus then stirred north wind to rage against our ships, a violent storm concealing land and sea, as darkness swept from heaven down on us. The ships were driven off course, our sails ripped into shreds by the power of that wind. We lowered the masts into the holds, and then, fearing for our lives, quickly rowed the ships toward the land. For 2 whole days and nights we lay there, hearts consumed with sorrow and exhaustion. But when fair-haired dawn gave birth to the 3rd day, we raised the masts, hoisted white sails and took our place on board. Wind and helmsman held us on our course, and I'd have reached my native land unharmed, but north wind, sea currents, and the waves pushed me off course as I was doubling back around Malea, driving me past Cythera. 9 days fierce winds drove me away from there, across the fish-filled seas, and on the 10th we landed where the lotus-eaters live, those who feed upon its flowering fruit. We went ashore and carried water back. Then my companions quickly had a meal by our swift ships. We had our food and drink, and then I sent some of my comrades out to learn about the men who ate the food the land grew there. I chose 2 of my men, and with them sent a 3rd as messenger. They left at once and met the lotus-eaters, who had no thought of killing my companions, but gave them lotus plants to eat, whose fruit, sweet as honey, made any man who sampled it lose his desire to ever journey home, or bring back word to us. They wished to stay, to remain among the lotus-eaters, feeding on the plant, eager to forget about their homeward voyage. I forced them, eyes full of tears, into our hollow ships, dragged them underneath the rowing benches, and tied them up. Then I issued orders for my other trusty comrades to embark and sail away with speed in our fast ships, in case another man might eat a lotus and lose all thoughts about his journey back. They raced on board, went to their places, and, sitting in good order in their rows, struck the grey sea with their oar blades. We sailed away from there with heavy hearts, and reached the country of the Cyclopes, a crude and lawless people. They don't grow any plants by hand, or plough the earth, but put their trust in the immortal gods, and though they never sow or work the land, every kind of crop springs up for them, wheat and barley and rich grape-bearing vines, and Zeus provides the rain to make them grow. They live without a council or assembly, or any rule of law, in hollow caves among the mountain tops. Each one of them makes laws for his own wives and children, and they shun all dealings with each other. Now, near the country of the Cyclopes, outside the harbour, there's a fertile island, covered in trees, some distance from the shore, but not too far away. Wild goats live there in countless numbers. They have no need to stay away from any human trails. Hunters never venture there, not even those who endure great hardships in the forest as they roam across the mountain peaks. That island has no flocks or ploughland. Through all its days it's never once been sown or tilled or known the work of human beings. The only life it feeds is bleating goats. The Cyclopes don't have boats with scarlet prows or men with skills to build them well-decked ships, which would enable them to carry out all sorts of things, like travelling to the towns of other people, the way men cross the sea to visit one another in their ships, or men who might have turned their island into a well-constructed settlement. The island is not poor. All things grow there in season. It has soft, well-watered meadows by the shore of the grey sea, where grapevines could flourish all the time, and level farmland, where they could always reap fine harvests, year after year. The subsoil is so rich. It has a harbour, too, with good anchorage. No need for any mooring cable there, or setting anchor stones, or tying up with cables on the stern. One can beach a ship and wait until a fair wind starts to blow and sailors' hearts tell them to go on board. At the harbour head there is a water spring. A bright stream flows out underneath a cave. Around it poplars grow. We sailed in there. Some god led us in through the murky night. We couldn't see a thing, and all our ships were swallowed up in fog. Clouds hid the moon, so there was no light coming from the sky. Our eyes could not catch a glimpse of land, or of the long waves rolling in on shore, until our well-decked ships had reached the beach. We hauled up our ships, took down all the sails, went up along the shore, and fell asleep, remaining there until the light of dawn. When rose-fingered early dawn appeared, we moved across the island, quite amazed. Some nymphs, daughters of Aegis-bearing Zeus, flushed out mountain goats, food for us to eat. We quickly brought our curved bows from the ships, and our long spears as well. Then, splitting up, we fanned out in 3 different groups to hunt. The gods soon gave us our hearts fill of game. I had 12 ships with me, and each of them received 9 goats by lot. I was the only one to be allotted 10. So all day long, until the sunset, we sat there and ate, feasting on that rich supply of meat, with sweet wine too. We'd not yet used up the red wine in our ships, and had some left. We'd taken many jars for everyone the day we'd seized the sacred citadel of the Cacones. Then we looked across toward the country of the Cyclopes, which was nearby. We observed their smoke, heard their talk and sounds of sheep and goats. Then the sun went down, and darkness fell. So we lay down to sleep on the seashore. As soon as rose-fingered early dawn appeared, I called a meeting and spoke to all the men. "My loyal comrades, stay here where you are. I'll take my ship and my own company and try to find out who those people are, whether they are rough and violent with no sense of law, or kind to strangers with hearts that fear the gods." I said these words, then went down to my ship and told my crew to loose the cables lashed onto the stern and come on board. They embarked with speed and, seated at the oarlocks in their rows, struck the grey sea with their oars. And then, when we'd made the short trip to the island, on the coast there, right beside the sea, we saw a high cave overhung with laurel. There were many flocks, sheep as well as goats, penned in there at night. All around the cave there was a high front courtyard made of stones set deep into the ground, with tall pine trees and towering oaks. At night a giant slept there, one that grazed his flocks all by himself, somewhere far off. He avoided others, and lived alone, away from all the rest, a law unto himself, a monster, made to be a thing of wonder, not like man who lives by eating bread, no, more like a lofty wooded mountain crag, standing there to view in isolation from the rest. I told the rest of my trustworthy crew to stay there by the ship and guard it, while I selected 12 of my best men, and went off to explore. I took with me a goatskin full of dark, sweet wine. Maron, Uanthe's son, one of Apollo's priests, the god who kept guard over Ismarus, had given it me, because to show respect we had protected him, his wife, and child. He lived in a grove of trees, a piece of ground sacred to Apollo. He gave me splendid gifts, 7 finely crafted golden talents, a pure silver mixing bowl, and wine as well, a total of 12 jars poured out unmixed, drink fit for gods. None of his servants, men or women in his household, knew about this wine. He was the only one, other than his wife and one house steward. Each time they drank that honey-sweet red wine, he'd fill 1 cup with it and pour that out in 20 cups of water, and the smell arising from the mixing bowl was sweet, astonishingly so. To tell the truth, no one's heart could then refuse to drink it. I took some of this wine in a large goatskin, a pouch of food as well. My soldier's heart was warning me a man might soon attack, someone invested with enormous power, a savage with no sense of law and justice. We soon reached his cave, but didn't find him. He was pasturing his rich flocks in the fields. We went inside the cave and looked around. It was astonishing. Crates full of cheese, pens crammed with livestock, lambs and kids sorted into separate groups, with yearlings, older lambs, and newborns each in different pens. All the sturdy buckets, pails, and milking bowls were awash with whey. At first, my comrades urged me to grab some cheeses and return, then drive the lambs and kids out of their pens back to our swift ship and cross the water. But I did not agree, though if I had, things would have been much better. I was keen to see the man in person, and find out if he would show me hospitality. When he did show up, as it turned out, he proved no joy to my companions. We lit a fire and offered sacrifice. Then we helped ourselves to cheese and ate it. We stayed inside the cave and waited there until he led his flocks back home. He came, bearing an enormous pile of dried-out wood to cook his dinner. He hurled his load inside the cave with a huge crash. In our fear, we moved back to the far end of the cave, into the deepest corner. He then drove his fat flock right inside the spacious cavern, just the ones he milked. Rams and billy goats he left outside in the open courtyard. Then he raised up high a massive boulder and fixed it in position as a door. It was huge. 22 four-wheeled wagons, good ones too, could not have shifted it along the ground. That's how immense it was, the rock he planted right in his doorway. He sat down with his bleating goats and ewes, and milked them all, each in turn, setting beside each one its young. Next he curdled half the white milk and set aside the whey in wicker baskets, then put the other half in bowls for him to drink up with his dinner. Once he'd finished working at these tasks, he lit a fire. Then he spied us and said, "Strangers, who are you? What sea route brought you here? Are you trading men or wandering the sea at random, like pirates sailing anywhere risking their lives to injure others?" As he spoke, our hearts collapsed, terrified by his deep voice and monstrous size, but still I answered him by saying, "We are Achaeans, coming back from Troy and blown off course by various winds across vast tracts of sea. Attempting to get home, we had to take a different route and chart another course, a scheme, I think, which gave Zeus pleasure. We boast that we are Agamemnon's men, son of Atreus, now the best-known man beneath wide heaven. The city he wiped out was such a great one, and he killed so many. As for us, we're visitors here, and come as suppliants to your knee, in hope that you will make us welcome or provide some gift, the proper thing one does for strangers. So, good sir, respect the gods. We're here as suppliants to you, and Zeus protects all suppliants and strangers. As god of guests, he looks after all respected visitors." I finished speaking. He answered me at once. His heart was pitiless. "What fools you are, you strangers! Or else you come from somewhere far away, telling me to fear the gods and shun their rage. The Cyclopes care nothing about Zeus, who bears the aegis, or the blessed gods. We are much more powerful than them. I wouldn't spare you or your comrades to escape the wrath of Zeus, not unless my own heart prompted me to do it. But now, tell me this. When you landed here, where did you moor your ship? A spot close by or further off? I'd like to know that." He said this to throw me off, but his deceit could never fool me. I was too clever. So I gave him a cunning answer. "Earthshaker Poseidon broke my ship apart, driving it against the border of your island on the rocks there. He brought us close inshore hard by the headland. Then winds pushed us inshore from the sea, but we escaped, me and these men here. We weren't destroyed." That's what I said, but his ruthless heart gave me no reply. Instead, he jumped up, seized 2 of my companions in his fist, and smashed them on the ground like puppy dogs. Their brains oozed out and soaked the ground below. Then he tore their limbs apart to make a meal, and chewed them up just like a mountain lion, innards, flesh, and marrow, leaving nothing. We raised our hands to Zeus and cried aloud to witness the horrific things he did, our hearts unable to do anything. Once Cyclops had stuffed his massive stomach with human flesh and washed it down with milk. He lay down in the cave, stretched out there among his flocks. Then, in my courageous heart, I formed a plan to move up close beside him, draw the sharp sword I carried on my thigh, and run my hand along his chest to find exactly where his midriff held his liver, then stick him there. But I had second thoughts. We, too, would have been utterly destroyed there in the cave. We didn't have the strength with our own hands to roll from the high door the massive rock he'd set there. So we groaned, and stayed there, waiting for bright dawn. As soon as rose-fingered early dawn appeared, he lit a fire and milked his flock one by one, with a newborn placed beside each mother. When this work was over, he once again snatched 2 of my men and gorged himself. After his meal, he easily rolled back the huge rock door, drove his rich flock outside, and set the stone in place, as one might put a cap back on a quiver. Then Cyclops, whistling loudly, drove his fat flocks away towards the mountain. He left me there, plotting a nasty scheme deep in my heart, some way of gaining my revenge against him, if Athene would grant me that glory. My heart came up with what appeared to me the best thing I could do. An enormous club, belonging to Cyclops was lying there beside a stall, a section of green olive wood he'd cut to carry with him once it dried. To human eyes it seemed just like the mast on a black merchant ship with 20 oars, a broad-beamed vessel which can move across the mighty ocean. That's how long and wide that huge club looked. Moving over to it, I chopped off a piece, 6 feet in length, gave it to my companions, telling them to smooth the wood. They straightened it, while I, standing at one end, chipped and tapered it to a sharp point. Then I picked up the stake and set it in the blazing fire to harden. That done, I set it carefully to one side, concealing it beneath some of the dung which lay throughout the cave in massive piles. Then I told my comrades to draw lots, to see which men would risk their lives with me. When sweet sleep came upon the Cyclops, we'd lift that stake and twist it in his eye. The crew drew lots and picked the very men I would have chosen for myself, 4 of them, with me included as 5th man in the group. In the evening he came back, leading on his fine-skinned animals, and bringing them inside the spacious cave, every sheep and goat in his rich flock, not leaving even one out in the open courtyard. Perhaps he had a sense of something wrong, or else a god had given him an order. He picked up and put his huge rock door in place, then sat to milk each ewe and bleating goat, one by one, setting beside each mother one of her young. When this task was over, he quickly seized 2 men and wolfed them down. Then I moved up and stood at Cyclops' side, holding in my hands a bowl of ivywood full of my dark wine. I said, "Cyclops, take this wine and drink it, now you've had your meal of human flesh, so you may know the kind of wine we had on board our ship. A gift of drink I was carrying for you, in hope you'd pity me and send me off on my trip home. But your savagery is something I can't bear. You cruel man, how will any of the countless other men ever visit you in future? How you act is so against all human law." I spoke. He grabbed the cup and gulped down the sweet wine. Once he'd swallowed, he felt such great delight. He asked me for some more, a second taste. "Be kind and give me some of that again. And now, without delay, tell me your name, so as my guest I can offer you a gift, something you'll like. Among the Cyclopes, grain-bearing earth, grows clusters of rich grapes, which Zeus's reign increases. But this drink, it's a stream of nectar and ambrosia." He spoke. So I handed him more fiery wine. 3 times I poured some out and gave it to him, and, like a fool, he swilled it down. So then, once the wine had addled Cyclops' wits, I spoke these reassuring words to him. "Cyclops, you asked about my famous name. I'll tell you. Then you can offer me a gift, as your guest. My name is Nobody. My father and mother, all my other friends, they call me Nobody." That's what I said. His pitiless heart replied, "Well, Nobody, I'll eat all your companions before you, and have you at the end, my gift to you, since you are my guest." As he said this, he collapsed and toppled over on his back, lying with his thick neck twisted to one side. All-conquering sleep then overpowered him. In his drunken state he kept on vomiting, his gullet drooling wine and human flesh. So then I pushed the stake deep in the ashes to make it hot, and spoke to all my men, urging them on, so no one in his fear would hesitate. When that stake of olive wood, though green, was glowing hot, its sharp point ready to catch fire, I walked across to it, and with my comrades standing round me, pulled it from the fire. And then some god breathed powerful courage into all of us. They lifted up that stake of olive wood and jammed its sharpened end down in his eye, while I, placing my weight at the upper end, twisted it around, just as a shipwright bores a timber with a drill, while those below make it rotate by pulling on a strap at either end, so the drill keeps moving. That's how we held the red-hot pointed stake, and twisted it inside the socket of his eye. Blood poured out through the heat. Around his eye, lids and brows were singed as his eyeball burned. Its roots were crackling in fire. When a blacksmith plunges a great axe or adze in frigid water with a loud hissing sound to temper it and make the iron strong, that's how his eyes sizzled around the stake of olive wood. His horrific screams echoed through the rock. We drew back, terrified. He yanked the stake out of his eye. It was all smeared with blood, hurled it away from him, and waved his arms. He started yelling out to nearby Cyclopes who lived in caves up on the windy heights, his neighbours. They heard him shouting out and came crowding round from all directions. Standing at the cave mouth, they questioned him, asking what was wrong. "Polyphemus, what's so bad with you that you keep shouting through the immortal night and wake us up? Is some mortal human driving off your flocks, or killing you by treachery or force?" From the cave, mighty Polyphemus roared, "Nobody is killing me, my friends, by treachery, not using any force." They answered him. Their words had wings. "Well then, if nobody is hurting you and you're alone, it must be a sickness given by great Zeus, one you can't escape. So say your prayers to our father, Lord Poseidon." With these words they went away, and my heart was laughing. My name and cunning had pulled off such a trick. But Cyclops groaned, writhing in agony. Groping with his hands, he picked up the stone, removed it from the door, and sat down there in the opening. He stretched out his arms, attempting to catch anyone who tried to get out with the sheep. In his heart he took me for a fool, but I was thinking the best thing I could do would be to find if somehow my crewmen and myself could escape being killed. I wove many schemes, all sorts of tricks, the way a man will do when his life's at stake, and we were faced with a murderous peril right beside us. To my heart the best plan was as follows. In Cyclops' flocks the rams were really fat, fine large creatures with thick fleecy coats of deep black wool. I picked 3 at a time, and, keeping quiet, tied them up together with twisted willow shoots, part of the mat on which the lawless monster Polyphemus used to sleep. The middle ram carried a man. The 2 on either side were for protection. So for every man there were 3 sheep. I too had my own ram, the finest one in the whole flock by far. I grabbed its back, then swung myself under its fleecy gut, and lay there face upwards, with my fingers clutching its amazing fleece. My heart was firm. We waited there like that until bright dawn. As soon as rose-fingered early dawn appeared, males in the flock trotted off to pasture, while the females, who had not been milked, and thus whose udders were about to burst, bleated in their pens. Their master, in great pain, ran his hands across the backs of all his sheep as they moved past him, but was such a fool he didn't notice how my men were tied underneath their bellies. Of that flock, my ram was the last to move out through the door, weighed down by its thick fleece and my sly thoughts. Mighty Polyphemus, as he stroked its back, spoke to the animal. "My lovely ram, why are you the last one in the flock to come out of the cave? Not once before have you ever lagged behind the sheep. No, you've always been well out in front, striding off to graze on tender shoots of grass, and be the first to reach the river stream. You're the one who longs to get back home once evening comes before the others, but now you're last of all. You must be sad, grieving for your master's eye, now blinded by that evil fellow with his hateful crew. That nobody destroyed my wits with wine, but I tell you he's not yet escaped being killed. If only you could feel and speak like me. You'd tell me where he's hiding from my rage. I'd smash his brains out on the ground in here, sprinkle them in every corner of this cave, and then my heart would ease the agonies this worthless nobody has brought on me." With these words, he pushed the ram away from him, out through the door. After the ram had moved a short distance from the cave and courtyard, first I got out from underneath its gut, and then untied my comrades. We rushed away, driving off those rich, fat, long-legged sheep, often turning round to look behind us until we reached our ship, A welcome sight to fellow crewmen. We'd escaped being killed, although they groaned and wept for those who died. But I would not allow them to lament. With a scowl, I told each man to stop. I ordered them to quickly fling on board the many fine fleeced sheep and then set sail across the salty sea. They climbed aboard at once, took their places on the rowing bench, and, sitting in good order in their rows, struck the grey sea with their oars. But then, when I was as far from land as a man's voice can carry when he shouts, I yelled out and mocked the Cyclops. "Cyclops, it seems he was no weakling after all, the man whose comrades you so wished to eat, using brute force in that hollow cave of yours. Your evil acts were bound to catch you out, you wretch. You didn't even hesitate to gorge yourself on guests in your own home. Now Zeus and other gods have paid you back." That's what I said. It made his heart more angry. He snapped off a huge chunk of mountain rock and hurled it. The stone landed up ahead of us, just by our ship's dark prow. As the stone sank, the sea surged under it, waves pushed us back towards the land, and like a tidal flood drove us on shore. I grabbed a long boat-hook and pushed us off, encouraging the crew, and with a nod of my head, ordering them to ply their oars and save us from disaster. They put their backs into it then and rowed. But when we'd got some distance out to sea, about twice as far, I started shouting, calling the Cyclops, although around me my comrades cautioned me from every side, trying to calm me down. "That's reckless. Why are you trying to irritate that savage? He just threw a boulder in the sea and pushed us back on shore. We really thought he'd killed us there. If he'd heard us speak or uttering a sound, he'd have hurled down another jagged rock and crushed our skulls, the timbers on this ship as well. He's strong, powerful enough to throw this far." That's what they said. But my warrior spirit didn't listen. So, anger in my heart, I yelled again. "Cyclops, if any mortal human being asks about the injury that blinded you, tell them Odysseus destroyed your eye, a sacker of cities, Laertes' son, a man from Ithaca." When I said this, he groaned and spoke out in reply. "Alas, now an ancient prophecy about me has truly been fulfilled. Telemachus, fine, tall son of Eurymus, a seer who surpassed all men in prophecy, reached old age among the Cyclopes as a soothsayer. He said all these things would come to pass some day. I'd lose my sight at the hand of someone called Odysseus. But I always expected he'd be large, a noble man invested with great strength. But now a puny, good-for-nothing weakling, after overpowering me with wine, has destroyed my eye. Come here, Odysseus, so I can give you your gift as my guest, and urge the famous shaker of the earth to escort you home. I am his son, and he boasts he's my father. If he wishes, he himself will cure me. No other blessed god nor any mortal man can do that." He finished speaking. I answered him and said, "I wish I were as certain I could end your life, rob you of your living spirit, and send you off to Hades' home, as I am confident not even the great shaker of the earth will fix your eye." After I'd said this, he stretched out his hands to starry heaven and made this prayer to Lord Poseidon. "Hear me, Poseidon, enfolder of the earth, dark-haired god. If I truly am your son, and if you claim to be my father, grant that Odysseus, sacker of cities, a man from Ithaca, Laertes' son, never gets back home. If it's his destiny to see his friends and reach his native land and well-built house, may he get back late and in distress after all his comrades have been killed and in someone else's ship. And may he find troubles in his house." That's what he prayed. The dark-haired god heard him. Then Cyclops once again picked up a rock, a much larger stone, swung it round and threw it using all his unimaginable power. It landed right behind the dark-prowed ship and almost hit the steering oar. Its fall convulsed the sea, and waves then pushed us on, carrying our ship up to the further shore. We'd reached the island where our well-decked ships were grouped together. Our comrades sat around them in great sorrow, always on the lookout for us. We rowed in, drove our ship up on the sand, then climbed out through the surf. From the ship's hold we unloaded Cyclops' flock and shared it out. I took great care to see that all men there received an equal part. But when the flock was being divided up, my well-armed comrades awarded me the ram as my special gift, one just for me. I sacrificed that ram there on the shore to Zeus, Cronos' son, lord of the dark cloud, ruler of all, offering him burnt pieces of the thigh. But he did not care for my sacrifice. Instead, he started planning to destroy all my well-decked ships and loyal comrades. So then, all day long until the sunset, we sat feasting on the huge supply of meat and sweet wine too. When the sun went down and darkness came, we lay down to rest and slept there on the shore beside the sea. As soon as rose-fingered early dawn appeared, I roused my shipmates and ordered them aboard to untie cables fastened to the sterns. They got in at once, moved to the rowing bench, and sitting in good order in their rows, they struck the grey sea with their oar-blades. So we sailed away from there, sad at heart, happy to have avoided being destroyed, although some dear companions had been killed.